A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our fourth Making Headway series. My name is Vignesh, and I am from the HEAD Foundation. It is truly my honor and my pleasure to welcome each and every one of you who is joining us for our fourth Making Headway series, Enhancing Digital Learning. This series was conceived in large part as a response to the enthusiastic feedback we received from attendees of our third series. But during the third series, Bridging the Digital Divide, we looked at various issues that our educators were facing when they had to make the change to online learning. We looked at the various modalities available, whether that's high-tech or whether that's more simple technology such as radio and television. And from our audience, we heard that they really wanted to understand better, how do we utilize these tools? What are the tools out there? What are the tools that are accessible? What are the tools that are pay use? And how do we use them? How do we effectively use them to educate our students? And we hope in this fourth series that you'll be able to have a lot of those questions answered. We're extremely fortunate during this series to have domain experts and practitioners from across the region, from Singapore, from the Philippines, from Indonesia, from Malaysia, speaking and sharing with us about their experiences. Today, we kick off our first session. And before I introduce the first session, ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to go through a little bit of house rules, just to share with y'all what is expected. So our presenters will be sharing their perspectives, sharing their experiences with us over the next couple of minutes, after which we will transition towards a Q&A panel session. I urge each and every one of you, when you hear certain issues that you would like clarified or certain issues that you would like to ask the presenter more about, please do type your questions in the Q&A chat box. Our moderator will address these questions later on and will invite our panelists to answer them. I'd also like to take this opportunity to urge our listeners who are logging in through Facebook to please come and join us on Zoom. We have still some space in our Zoom room, so please do come and join us. And I say this because many of you have reached out with a request for certificates of participation for attending the series. And we're very happy to share that we will be issuing participants who attend all 3 sessions in this series a certificate of participation if they were to request for one. The form to request for a certificate of participation will be shared with all participants during the last session. You have to have attended all 3 via Zoom and have to have stayed through the majority of the session to be issued a certificate of participation. And I thank you for your understanding on this matter. Ladies and gentlemen, also talking about Facebook, we have created a new Facebook group, Teaching, Learning, and Leading. And we hope that through that group, we can urge educators in the region and beyond to share their stories and their examples, because we at the HEAD Foundation, we do not know all the answers, and neither do all our speakers and moderators. But learning from each other, we'll gain so much more knowledge. So ladies and gentlemen, I'll share more about the group later on, but in the interest of time, let me please introduce our esteemed moderator for this series, and same as our moderator for the last series, Dr. Carmela Oracion from the Ateneo Center for Educational Development. Dr. Carmela, please.
Good afternoon, Sir Vignesh and everyone at the HEAD Foundation, esteemed panelists and participants. We are happy to welcome you all to this 3-part webinar series this November on the theme, Enhancing Remote Learning. Now on the 2nd year of a teaching-learning process that is quite unlike how it had been in the past because of COVID-19, educators have gotten used to remote teaching via various learning management systems, or in places where internet access is a big challenge, instruction through printed materials or digital materials, and even television-based or radio-based instruction. The shift from familiar instructional processes to new ways of teaching and learning that had to be done urgently in order to minimize the impact on schooling and on the children was quite stressful, even a nightmare for many. But educators committed to the welfare of students and devoted to the preparation of the young people for a good future lost no time exploring new ways of teaching lessons and engaging students in the unusual situation. And we are now where we are. Indeed, as Winston Churchill famously said, never let a good crisis go to waste. We see quite clearly now how educators in various levels of the education ladder all over the world exerted great effort and tapped on their creative abilities to explore new ways of delivering the lessons. We are where we are now, and I think you will agree with me that we have reached a good place. It is far from perfect, but it is a good place, a good situation, one, in fact, that is pointing to many more exciting and promising possibilities. While at the onset of the pandemic, at the start of the past academic year, our educators were all groping and struggling to find alternatives to face-to-face classes. A certain level of comfort has now been reached in the different learning modalities. In fact, the manner of conducting classes has been much improved. In many places that we now say, we will continue to implement a lot of what we have learned to do even when face-to-face classes will already be given the green light by health agencies. Continuous, never-ending enhancement was key. We have reached where we are now because educators and those who support the education sector kept on improving what was there by initiating innovations endlessly. Hence, in this round of webinars, we focus on the theme enhancing remote learning. We strongly believe that enhancing educational processes cannot stop. It is a continuous process. There will be 3 parts in this practice-focused series, which aims to share best practices as well as relevant, actionable strategies and tips with school leaders and educators. We begin this series with today's session on enhancing remote live teaching, followed by supplementing online teaching next week, November 18, and the session on enriching remote assessments on November 25, also a Thursday. In this practitioner-focused series, we will have the opportunity to see ways by which learners can be engaged in the online learning process, how educators can motivate students to be self-directed learners, and incorporate interaction in asynchronous teaching, and how assessments can continue to serve their purpose even as these are conducted in remote teaching modalities while being sensitive to students' circumstances. The webinar series is quite promising, isn't it? In this afternoon's session, we have 3 panelists who will share their experiences and ideas with us. Dr. Fung devotes his time teaching students how to learn through thoughtful technological integration. He researches on ways videography techniques can improve learning outcomes in remote learning. Dr. Fung is a recipient of the National University of Singapore Annual Digital Education Award, that was in 2021, and the D2L Award Innovation in Teaching and Learning, that was in 2019, for his passionate efforts in fostering technology-enhanced learning. Mr. Obert Josianto is currently leading education programs and skills initiatives for Microsoft Indonesia, focusing on transforming educators across Indonesia towards the digital era and upskilling the future workforce with digital competence and credentials. Mr. Josianto has 20 years of experience in education as a teacher, a principal, a trainer, and a university lecturer. He holds bachelor's degrees in computer science, math and mathematics, and a master's degree in instructional technology. Mr. Adrian Cruz is an EdTech coach, Google certified trainer and innovator, Google Educator Group Philippines Emeritus, and founder of Look Beyond Digital Learning Solutions. He is passionate about leading schools and other educational institutions towards digital transformation through adoption of Google for Education products and other recommended programs to increase awareness and productivity. Before we proceed, let us have an icebreaker through a simple poll. Kindly register your answer to the question so that later we can see what this particular group, the participants of session 1, consider as most challenging aspect of remote live teaching or online teaching. Here is the question, our dear participants. Which of the following do you find most challenging about teaching online? First choice, looking after students' well-being. In face-to-face classes, we could see whether the children or the students were happy or sad, whether they were feeling quite ill or whatever. Unfortunately, with most videos off due to internet connection concerns, it is not possible for us to observe this in the same level as in the past. No? So is this a challenge? Looking after students' well-being. Second choice, connecting with students during class. Is there now a substitute for eye contact? No? The eye contact that we used to have between ourselves as teachers and the students. Are we able to sense whether the students on the other side of the screen are passive? Third choice, engaging students in collaborative work. When we used to have face-to-face classes, at some point we could ask the students to bring their seats together or their tables together or to sit on the floor in a circle in order to start a collaborative activity. But that's no longer possible now. But how is collaborative work still possible in the present environment? And finally, is the fourth choice a challenge? Managing class time. Is 40 minutes of face-to-face classes or 50 minutes or 1 hour equivalent to 40 minutes or 50 minutes or 1 hour of online teaching and learning? What is a correct pacing for online teaching? All right, so kindly answer this poll question which of the following do you find most challenging about teaching online? Looking after students' well-being, connecting with students during class, engaging students in collaborative work, or managing class time. With one more participant, we shall hit the 1,000 mark. And we hope that we get as many responses. No, oh, there, it's already 1,000. And we hope that we will get 1,000 responses to our poll question. Please go on. But in the meantime, no, we shall ask Dr. Fung to start the ball rolling. He shall start the webinar today by sharing with us ideas on how to facilitate engaging online learning, beginning with the community of inquiry framework. Without any further delay, let us warmly welcome Dr. Fung from the Department of Chemistry, National University of Singapore. Dr. Fung, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Mel, for the introduction. Thank you very much, audience, for sharing your time here with us today. So I'm Fung from NUS Singapore. I'm an IT for Teaching instructor in chemistry, and very happy to share with you some of the strategies and techniques we put through in the crisis is engaging online learning amidst the pandemic. So today, there's 3 takeaways from this presentation. Number 1 is I'll be going over with you this cognitive inquiry framework that you can prime your online classes based on these techniques, and then how you apply this framework in your online creation of this curriculum, and how our success at NUS is based on the student feedback and the instructors' thoughts. We know that this newborn classroom was just born last year, 2020. We see our students' faces on the screen, lots of faces, and this is something very new and unique. And we wonder, what is the best way to create a similar learning experiences online, similar to what we had in the past? So the first thing is, we would like all of you to answer this poll. It's hosted on Poll Everywhere. If you see on the top, you see a URL. You can type the link, enter, or you can scan this QR code. Do let us know, where are you right now? We have over 1,000 participants. I'm very happy to know where you're from. Once you're inside, you see this world map, and you just have to click where you are right now. Oh, we see responses coming. Wow, this place, if you see my cursor, I think it's in Malaysia. Oh, okay, there's a couple of you from the Philippines. Wow, what is this place in the middle? Between Europe and US. And some people are in the ocean. Are you traveling in the ship? Oh, this is very interesting. If we have some from Antarctica or the Arctic, keep it coming, okay? This is very genuine because you ask the questions and you know where you are. So we are a really diverse audience here. Very happy. Let's continue, all right? Keep responses coming. Now, so what is this cognitive inquiry framework? It was invented by the researcher Garrison et al., right? And we find that this framework really guides us through, especially in online learning environment here. So there are 3 parts of these presences that allows for holistic learning experiences. And I will start with the teaching presence first. So when you have a teaching presence, we find that this supports the learner's thought, right? In that they will do activity to achieve the learning outcome. When learners and the teachers are aware that they are in the learning environment here, they will feel cognizant that they are gaining knowledge and for the learning transfer. The other important aspects for this presence is the social presence, when it's more on the students. If they know that they are in a classroom and classes are never alone, right? They're with their friends. If they are aware that there are participants, their friends who are learning from a teacher, they will connect, communicate, and discuss even after the class. And this is especially important on a Zoom kind of teaching online, because normally in a brick and mortar classroom, they can just turn around and see their friends, but now it is at the home everywhere and they see no one but themselves. So as teachers, there are ways to make it possible for them to know that their friends are with them for a good discussion. And lastly, importantly, is this cognitive presence that for students to think about and reflect on the knowledge transfer in the classes. So this is where the after-class activity really help and for them to self-develop this understanding. So now you see these three pillars of this framework is so important because if you only achieve two of them, it will not be a holistic education experience, but you just have some good achievement, but not entirely holistic. And now this COI framework is not just came out during online, but we started this in the past, but we find it immensely useful through the pandemic. So the role of this COI framework is really to guide the instructors and learners through a very engaging online remote classes, and it does promote critical thinking during class and after classes. And ultimately, we want our students to learn very well, and the way to do it is creating a holistic, very fruitful learning experience for them. So what are the specific strategies we do to create this online learning, right? And before the pandemic hit us, we have been doing that in a face-to-face classes. We believe in an active learning environment. If you know, if we espouse this active learning, we give you a poll, right? We see where you're from, we talk about the results on the spot. And the other thing we do in the class is we collaborate. Now we collaborate with students, with former students who are teachers because they want to help their peers. They want to help their junior students. They find the course useful. We also collaborate with other pedagogist advisors. We collaborate with other faculty because the more we engage others, the more we learn from them, right? And the other thing, this is, if you can do it, that'd be wonderful. There's team teaching. When you have two instructors here, right, talking about the topic and engaging in a very active dialogue, it is so real. And this is immensely important because through online, when you only see one instructor here, we are just talking to the screen. But if I have a partner teacher here, we are engaging and learning so that it's so dynamic. It is not rehearsed, but really challenging each other's thoughts. And that will let the students also challenge us. And that's really critical thinking. So with this in place, it does fulfill all the three presence in the cognitive inquiry framework. Now, to go even deeper here, what are we trying to do is to strengthen the two-way equilibrium. One is the student interaction, right? Which means how can we foster this online space for them to talk, right, to them? So one way is we have a chat function in this Zoom here, but it's not just having this IT tool that's a chat, but how do we use activity to promote them to talk and communicate? The other thing is we have checkpoints with live responses. You had one just now, there'll be more coming, right? So that we know that it's active learning, the students are with you all the time, they are not just drifting, it's not passive. And lastly, we want to strengthen this teacher and student interaction. So how can we have this dialogue? It's not just a didactic lecture, but it is really learning in this community. So we pull out some of these tools and a lot of them are freely available. That's the Padlet. So Padlet, what it does online is it replaces a whiteboard. Now, think about it, before the pandemic, you are in your classroom with students. There are whiteboards, right? When someone goes up there, be it a student, teacher, people look at it. You have two or more people even co-drawing it, right? Giving responses and presenting. And this is what it does. A Padlet replaces the whiteboard. So you see there are different tabs here and each tab represents a whiteboard. And you can see that everybody are writing and participating. So everybody is learning actively. And that fulfills the learning presence, in the COI framework. And the middle here is the poll everywhere. It's a kind of live poll and you can see the responses all the time, that responses coming up. So you know that, oh, there are real people learning with me, that I'm not alone with the lecturer. And the other thing is, it's on Zoom. We all use Zoom or similar software, and there are some tricks to work it out. So next poll here, do you know about the UN SDG, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal? Goal number 4 is to provide a quality education, right? So what you do is, right, it's okay to not know it because I do not know who responded it. It's always good to start a live poll with something that doesn't connect with a right or wrong answer pertaining to knowledge, because you want to create this learning environment that's safe psychologically for them to just, okay, I'm used to getting this poll that's new, right? You don't want them to be frustrated by the technology and the domain knowledge, right? So we overcome the barrier first of the technology. Okay, just click. Good, okay. For those who didn't know, check it out later. Next thing is, do you know about Squid Game? So you see a reversal of response here. And then people will know that, okay, this is not planted, right? This is very real. Squid Games is such a hot trend right now. You will know it. But how does it relate to your teaching, your domain knowledge? Remember, this is to get over the barrier of technology first. When learners know that, oh, you're on the side, we're on the same platform here, then you go deeper to asking questions pertaining to your classroom. All right, good. So the other thing is we try to create the classes so that it's not just between teachers and students, but how do we foster the student to work with students? And it is possible. So here you see a palette here where you see like there are 5 different whiteboards, and of course we assign them groups here. Now you notice that it is important to have anonymity, because online people sometimes are afraid to even share genuinely because they see no one here, they don't know who are there. But if they're able to hide their names, right, and people are just giving their responses. So this is one strategy you can use to replace the whiteboard, to know that people are actively engaging. Now, the other thing is use the chat function. I can see many Q&A chat is coming in, but think about it. If I'm the only teacher here and there's no support from HEADS Foundation, no support from my moderator and other panelists here, then I have to think about technology, right? So my mind is not focused on the knowledge transfer and I worry about other things. That's not helpful. So what happens is in our classroom, I have a teaching assistant. That could be a class monitor. It could be a senior student or some volunteer, co-teacher, somebody who supports pedagogy. And when I ask a question here and go back to the slide to discuss, there are students who, maybe some of you are asking questions, keep it coming, right? Maybe I can't see it because I'm focusing on the slides, going over this topic, but my teaching assistant can at least respond to the people, acknowledge it first. So the people who ask questions know that they are recognized. It's not that they're talking to a robot or they have to wait a long time. And this is very important because we know we want feedback and this active engagement. So here, this slide is an example of a student project work. So they create a poster. We wanted them to do collaborative project. So what happens is they found tools that can allow them, as a canvas and other things, to put a poster together. And we find that this really exceeded the expectation. We didn't know that they could work so well. And we asked them, what do you do? And they find it's because in the classroom, when we are with students here, we build the network. We create breakout sessions. We go inside and foster this relationship so that after the classes, they are neatly together. Their relationship is built. And then they'll find other tools to collaborate. So the teachers also have to work a bit more to foster this relationship. Now, these are the students' testimonies. They find that Zoom classes, right, are engaging because there's a chat function and the TA to respond to it to clarify, either on the spot or if not, they can consolidate, then the teachers can answer them at the end. The other thing is, right, because of this chat function here, normally students are very shy, but with this chat, people just type it in and they will just have more questions and engagement compared to pre-pandemic. And this is something we celebrate because we want them to ask and learn, right? It's a dialogue process. So if you are using poll, make it something that is, wow, there's someone from the north here. That's very harmless, right? Remember, get over the technology barrier first, and then you go deeper to your domain knowledge, right? So I'm so happy we see a diverse people from different locations in the world, right? This is fun, right? And you make people think. And I would like to summarize today's 3 takeaways. Center your online curriculum, the teaching on this cognitive inquiry framework, the presences, how we apply using this framework, and the learner success. So with that, I thank you. Let's stay connected on Twitter or LinkedIn. Just add and we can have a further conversation. And what is this little graphic here? Most of you in here knows about Squid Games, right? So do scan this and check out our work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Fung, for sharing with us the community of inquiry framework and how you used this to structure lessons for an undergraduate course at the NUS. The 3-pronged human approach is an important insight and takeaway. We see how this approach has led to an engaging experience for your students as they indicated in their testimonies. If any participant has any questions or reactions, kindly use the Q&A function. At this point, we shall now proceed to the presentation of Mr. Hubert Cosianto. through a glimpse of how Microsoft is helping schools through enabling remote learning solutions, he will introduce to us ways by which inclusive remote learning might be possible and how all who are involved can be empowered. Sir Albert, we are excited to hear from you. I now turn over the screen to you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Oracion. I hope everyone can see my slides and can hear me well. Okay, first of all, thank you for inviting me to share the learnings that I've recently discovered from our experiences throughout the pandemic. So it's something unique and something we didn't think would be possible, yet it happened. So without further ado, let me go straight to my presentation. A brief introduction. My name is Albert Hosianto. Dr. Oracion had called out my CV earlier today. I'm currently the Education Programs and Skill Lead for Microsoft Indonesia, and I'm doing this role pretty much for the past 10 years in Microsoft. So you may have heard about Microsoft before, but I wanted to share a little bit with everyone about what Microsoft is committed to do in education. So we've been investing heavily in education worldwide. We have created more than 1,000 free learning paths for everyone to take, be it educators, students, whatever learners, through various levels of understanding, from the very basics until the very advanced courses. We have specific engineered building education related scenarios. We have more than 400 engineers. I think this is one of the largest number of a software company in the world that has a dedicated education resources. And we've donated more than $1 billion worth of software and services to tens of thousands of nonprofits around the world. And we have so many partners doing trainings and to reach millions of learners around the world. Now, throughout COVID-19, what we have done is we're helping basically all schools, be it university, be it K-12 schools. We partner with all our customers and all those who are struggling to deliver remote learning by providing support and giving access to our technology. So Microsoft provided Office 365 A1, including Microsoft Teams, at no cost to all schools as long as you are a valid education institution. We provide Microsoft Teams to enable remote learning, and we are also giving services and supports to UNESCO and to all other organizations in navigating through the pandemic. Now, in times like this, remote learning that is inclusive is very much needed, more than ever. So what Microsoft does for the past close to 2 years was that we're focusing to enable inclusive remote learning, how we can empower the instructors or the lecturers or the teachers and IT staffs, and how we help to foster ongoing engagement. Because what we learned is that learners learn best from their communities, their peers, be it from in-country or from around the world. So this is what is interesting. We are focusing to deliver that. So Microsoft is here to support you. Our solution came at no cost, and it could be integrated with your existing system, be it LMS, be it other learning platform. And everything that you are using is based on the security, compliance, and compatibility foundation that Microsoft is basing all their products on. We may have heard, and I believe everybody has heard so many cases where during online learnings or online meetings, governments, schools, universities, there's been breaches and hacks, and there's been many inappropriate materials being posted. So this is something Microsoft is committed to avoid. So everything is built on security, compliance, and compatibility. Now, I wanted to focus on one concept of the inclusive remote learning, because this is something very close to heart, because many of the educators are struggling to make ends meet. And because of that, we're trying to make it as simple as possible and try to engage as many features to support the remote learning to be as inclusive as possible. Many times the students have challenges with access to devices. Many of them rely on simply mobile phones, or they only have one devices to be shared among the household. There may be 2, 3 kids and parent working from home using the same device. So there could be challenges with that. So Microsoft Teams allows lecturers to post their classes, the synchronous session on the existing LMS through a link, and they can do stream lectures. Every time they do, it could be broadcasted live, or it could be automatically recorded and being posted on the class session. So if I can't come to the class because of whatever challenges, I can always go and click the recording immediately and can learn. So many other features like live captions for those who are English speaking professors or teachers. You can ask your student to activate this, and it could translate to whatever language they want to they want to be translated. It could be English to Bahasa Indonesia, or English to English, or English to other languages. It's running quite well. And there's so many other tools that we can elaborate. What I'm telling you now is what already existed. If you ask me 3 months from now, we'll have more things coming up, and it's really fast. So basically, the tools that Microsoft offers can collaborate with whatever platforms already existed in your school, be it for a video, be it for a learning management system, and we can access it from whatever devices, be it a Windows devices, an iOS device, Mac OS, or even Android devices. Many times, students only have access to low-end Android devices. It can run smoothly without a problem. So Teams for Education allows so many things. It is basically integratable with everything here, and it simply work as a hub. Not many times people say Teams is like an LMS, but it's not exactly an LMS, but it is a collaboration hub. So you can integrate everything there. So this is what Microsoft Teams is all about, and there's more to learn. It can deliver distance learning, it can connect to third-party apps, and it is inclusive to all learners. Now, enough about Teams. You can learn from the Microsoft's website, but what I wanted to share with you in the next 5 minutes is the case studies that we are doing with a regional office of education in Sinjai, which is in Indonesia, in Sulawesi. So we're not talking about big cities like Jakarta or Surabaya or Yogyakarta, for those of you who are familiar with Indonesia, but it's located in a smaller region in part of Sulawesi, which is in the central of Indonesia. There's about 316 schools there, and they're all using Microsoft Teams. 43,000 students, 4,000 teachers, they're all using Teams for teaching and learning. And what they did was mind-blowing, because they started their journey just before COVID hit in December 2019. They started training their teachers in January 2020, and they amazingly hit it off immediately and could do so many amazing amazing things. So we've had several sessions with them, facilitation sessions, including teams from Microsoft and including the regional lead for education office. And we have activated 38,000 accounts from the region for everyone to use. And this is how they do it. The teachers is teaching in the school, students accessing it from home, and can access it from whatever devices they have with a native app that runs on every platform. So they're doing teaching and learning from school, yet students can access it without any hassle. This is what they do. In some areas, because they have very few COVID cases, they started the face-to-face teaching and learning earlier than many regions in the country. So what they did is they held a limited classroom session with half the class only. And so you use mobile devices instead of fancy or expensive equipments. They use whatever tools existed to create a feeling of classroom for everyone. Because if it's only the teachers' faces that they see, it's not as engaging as what they thought or what they would have had expected for the classroom experiences. So, and whatever they're doing is purely authentic. Teachers develop their own lessons. They develop their own contents. They have their own mini studios in every school. This is something I was amazed myself when they updated me. We're creating a mini studio in every school. So our teachers can create their own unique content rather than relying on YouTube. So everything is based on the local culture, based on the local ways of teaching, and based on how the teachers used to teach. And it challenges the teachers to be extra creative. And this is interesting because the pandemic didn't stop them from connecting to other schools, to other countries around the region. They had sessions connecting with Malaysia and Brunei, also Singapore. And this is my my most touching slide for me personally. This is the area that they are covering. So we're not talking about areas whereas everything can be reached by car or by motorcycle. No, the areas that we're talking about are areas with such remote location, with very challenging geographical situation, yet they manage to deliver both online and offline learning with very little hassle. There are challenges, no doubt, very little connectivity, but they find ways to make it work with teams. So the key takeaways here that I have outlined is, number one, teachers' creativity plays a significant role in students' learning experiences. Many times, teachers would rely on ready-made contents. They plug in YouTube's videos, play it, and that's it. Yet they wanted to make it authentic and challenges the teacher's creativity. And it worked well. Number two, innovation knows no boundaries. I was surprised myself when I saw how they used mobile phones to act as video camera for the whole classroom. I didn't think of that. I was thinking of creating, of using either fancy digital camera or webcam. We didn't think of using or borrowing teachers' mobile phone and just place it there, using whatever already existed. They don't have to buy everything new and fancy. And the last part, they showed me that technology is only a tool. It's the human that makes it meaningful. Technology will still be there. It's how they open up their horizons, be innovative, and making it meaningful. If it's not for the human side, the technology will still be there, but it may not be as meaningful as the case study that I just presented. So it's, and this is what I always talk wherever and whenever I am invited. Digital transformation is about the human. It's not about the technology. So remember, the human part is what needs to change, not buying technology per se. So that's all I am. That's all I have for today, Dr. Oracion. Thank you for the session. I pass it back to you now.
We learned a lot from you, Sir Albert. Thank you very, very much. The case study that you shared with us is very illuminating and inspiring. We thank you for inspiring us, for reminding us that innovation knows no boundaries. Wow, innovation knows no boundaries. Innovation can be and should be inclusive. Thank you too for keeping us in the right perspective in relation to technology by underscoring the fact that technology is just a tool. Ultimately, it is the human touch of each teacher that will enable students to truly learn from any experience brought forth by a creative innovation. We are now ready to proceed to the session of our next panelist, Mr. Adrian Cruz. This time, we shall see the possibilities in store for us through Google. Tools and apps have become part of the everyday language of those among us utilizing online teaching and learning processes. We have Sir Adrian with us this afternoon to share with all of us some possibilities with Google, some of which a number of us may not have encountered yet. And so there's a lot to learn from him. Sir Adrian, you can now take the screen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oracion. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Adrian Cruz. My topic for this session would be improving online teaching practices with Google Workspace tools, or the Google Workspace for Education applications. Now, we've already been using the Google Workspace tools since last year, or maybe earlier, even before the pandemic. These are some of the tools that we are familiar already. We've been using with our online deliverables for our teaching, for our productivity, for our even for our reports. But I would like to emphasize here some other tools that we haven't explored yet. I already we know we're already in our second year of online teaching, especially in the Philippines, that we've been still doing remote teaching. And I think one of the primary concerns of our teachers right now is how to continuously or improve our engagement with our students, given that we have limited synchronous sessions with our students. With all of the tools around, we already know Google. We've been using Google, the search engine, anytime we want to search, right? If we have inquiries. But over the years, it has tremendously developed our skills when it comes to searching, to become this tool to be part of our daily activities. And since Google has been very useful, they've really explored and took efforts when it comes to knowing the pain points and the needs of the teachers and students. So that's why these tools were created, not just for us to, be able to do things remotely, but as well as to improve the 21st century skills of our students, such as their communication skills, their collaboration, their creativity, and most especially their critical thinking skills. Um, Now, these are the tools that we are currently using. Maybe you can also type in the chat section if you have your favorite Google Workspace tools. If you can see here in my screen, we have some of the apps that we are always using, or maybe our go-to tools when it comes to like doing our quizzes, doing our presentations, or even just checking our presentations. So we have your calendar, Google Meet forms, and the others. But what I would like to highlight for today's session, and that your primary take, my goal for today is also to be able to use these following applications already once we finish the session. Now, one application would be Google Drawings. Now, this is a diagramming software included as part of the free web-based Google Docs editors offered by Google. Now, this is one of the underrated applications of Google, but very, very useful. Now, I always tell this to the teachers, to my audience. When teachers ask me before what is Google Drawings, I always tell them it's like a photo editing application, or maybe like a soft application to edit images, to enhance, like cropping or creating images. But it's actually more than that, especially now that with this pandemic, it has really taught us how to be more creative, to be more resourceful. Now, this Google Drawing has a lot of potential when it comes to engaging our students. I'd like to show you some activities that you can already use. Now, our concern here is that if we do our synchronous session with our students, are they still here with us, or are they still connected with us? So our goal here is to come up with like mini lessons, or like we make sure that we chunk our strategies when it comes to synchronous session. We can do, for example, lectures for maybe 10 minutes or 5 minutes, and then cut and continue with like an engaging activity such as this one. Now, what's good about this kind of activities is that you can set it up as an activity sheet for your students. It's also nice that when you give these kinds of materials for your students, they would feel that they have ownership to the material that you're giving. It gives them the opportunity to explore also through these kind of materials. And at the same time, we are also leading our students towards independent learning. So these are some activities that I'd like to show you, but later on, I'll be shifting from like an hands-on activity that we can do and demonstrate. So this is a sample, also a sample activity. For example, if you're an English teacher, you can come up with like activities where you can put all your vocabulary words into boxes and give them instructions to just drag all the following options. So it's like rehashing the old materials that you have, maybe in printed or maybe in other file format, to make it even more engaging. Since the Google Workspace for Education tools, they have a lot of collaborative features. Now, this also applies to like math subjects, or even all of the other subjects that you're dealing with. Now, I'd like to show you one more example for the Google Drawings. This is like a drag and drop activity and an all-in-one material for your students. Since I'm a science teacher, I'd like to use this one as an example. I've already prepared this material ahead of time. So just in case you want to go to this application and follow me, you can just type in drawings.google.com. Once you type this in your search section or your search box, it will automatically redirect you to this application. It's free, no need to install anything. Now, just to give you and hopefully inspire you, this is sample activity for science teachers, wherein you can just use the page and even the outside portions of the application to give everything for your students, like put the instructions. This is actually an image that I've already searched, right? And if I want something like a draggable activity where students will identify each parts. Now, what you have to do is just download or copy a specific image that you really want and just put it here. If you've seen here in my presentation, on the left portion, I've inserted here a text box and colored it with specific color where I can put here the instructions. Now, to set everything up for the students, I have come up with like different boxes to all of the labels. For example, this one. So assuming that we've already done everything, right? So once we give the link to each of our students, they all have the ability to work on this material. And at the same time, what's also good about these tools is that you can link other resources. Like, for example, if you want them to watch a specific YouTube video, for example, this one, you can just copy. Okay. You can just copy links from, for example, a video. So you can give them instructions here. Just highlight the word that you want to emphasize, and then you can see here, insert link, and then you can just paste here the YouTube video. So they don't need to go to the actual YouTube website anymore. And then the other one, if you have like supplementary websites for other students, maybe for advanced students, or if you want them to explore more on the topic, you can also like copy other references and paste it somewhere here. Like, for example, I've already prepared here, for more readings, kindly access this website. So I'm just gonna highlight the word website and then go to the link again and then paste it here. So what's good about this kind of material is that you can already set something like this, good for 1 week, for example, or one whole topic for the students, all in one material. You have your other resources like websites, videos, or maybe even like quizzes. All you have to do is to have like links already prepared for your students. Now, the other one, just to further emphasize, if you haven't explored the other application of Google, this is Google Jamboard. This is an interactive whiteboard that offers rich collaborative experience for teams and classrooms. Now, you can also inject these kinds of activities for your students just to make sure if they're still there, if to also gather their thoughts. Like, we have students that are very quiet, but they might have more inputs when you redirect them to an activity where there's typing involved. So these are some of the samples that I hope you might be inspired. This is also similar with Google Drawings, but this one would be in a more sticky note manner, or just also giving them opportunities to brainstorm and also gather their thoughts. So you can use this to engage them visually, to keep them active in your allotted synchronous session. And even for other like technical subjects, you can also do this with Jamboard. Now, just to give you more inspiration, I'd like you to access this material. It's tinyurl.com/THFSEL Jam. So this is also an activity that you can use for your students, especially that we're still in remote teaching. We have to make sure also that to keep on checking with our students. We can also integrate or inject social emotional learning with our students. So this is an example activity that you can also use for your students. For example, you have an instruction: drag a diamond to the color or word that best describes your feeling right now. So this is something that could maybe spice up or like set up the mood of our students before starting the session, or maybe in the middle, or maybe at the end, just to make sure if they're okay, or so this is also important in every subject, since we are still in this difficult situation. And if you can see here, you can also monitor if your students are still with you. You can see that they're doing it, they're collaborating. So this is something that they could also enjoy. Now, another one here, I'm going to go to the next portion. You could further elaborate their what they did here in the first frame. In the second frame here, you can also ask them, click on the sticky note icon, reflect and write a sentence using a word from the mood meter for how you feel. So they can also expound what they feel in the section. So this is something that you can use to gather thoughts, and also to also check their attendance at some point, or maybe use it as an exit ticket. So these are things that you can use. So many ways. There are so many ways to engage our students. We may be been seeing these tools before, but there are so many ways to be more creative, to introduce this to our students, so that we can make sure that they have meaningful learning experiences with you, with your lessons. For my key learning points here, one would be understand and prepare your tech tools. What we should do as teachers is know the basic tools and applications that will match your learning objectives. So it's really important to check and prioritize our learning objectives. And then from all the tools that we've learned in the past, or what's continuously being offered to us, we check if that would match our learning objectives. Second would be interactive learning. Think of ways how to actively engage students during synchronous sessions. So for synchronous sessions, we have to make our efforts to engage our students. Third would be students' learning experience. So we have to maximize the allotted time towards effective online learning experience, and not just doing it for the sake of, finishing just the whole time for the requirements. We have to make sure that we are really maximizing the learning potentials of our students with every synchronous sessions with them. And for tips for everybody, plan for your online class. It's really important to plan. We have to be strategic on how to utilize our tools, our plans and activities for our students, whether for synchronous or asynchronous sessions. Second would be think in mini lessons. So I always tell this one, we have to break our lessons into maybe 10-minute mini lessons, followed by an activity or practice period. This would really help them to make sure, especially they have like short attention span, most of our students now. So we have to give variations with our students. And third would be social emotional learning. This is really important, or what we call SEL. Consider integrating SEL into your lessons. It really encompasses the knowledge and skills students need to function in the world. So these are the tools that I hope after this session you can already use for your online classes. So again, with that, this is Adrian Cruz. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Sir Adrian. After listening to your presentation, I think there's a lot of new possibilities our participants are eager to try. Thank you very much for reminding us about the importance of understanding and preparing very well for the use of tech tools, including rehearsing the use of these before actually trying them out with our students for the intended interactive learning experience to be smooth and effective. The tip you offered of thinking in mini lessons is valuable. I agree with you that such practice can help students digest the lessons better and master the skills thoroughly. Thank you very much, Dr. Fung, Sir Albert, and Sir Adrian. We learned a lot from your experiences and insights. As in, we learned a lot. Before we proceed to the Q&A portion, let us first see what you, our participants, consider as most challenging about remote live teaching or online teaching. So here, okay, the most challenging for most of you would be engaging students in collaborative work. Second most challenging is connecting with students during class. Third, looking after students' welfare or well-being. And only a few replied that managing class time is a challenge. So that shows, I think, that you have already acquired the proficiency, no, for handling the online tools. Okay, so thank you very much for that. We may be able to revisit some of those ideas as we hear from our panelists in the Q&A portion. Okay, so let us start the Q&A portion by addressing these two questions to Dr. Fung. Dr. Fung, there are these two questions from the audience. One, how can we assess students learning online? We will take up assessment on the last session, but maybe you have some ideas, Dr. Fung, on how we can assess students learning online. And second question, is the COI applicable to all kinds of education levels? Dr. Fung?
Right. Thank you very much for the question. That's a very good question. So I want to clarify, but it's a bit hard, so I'll just interpret from two ways. When we talk about assessing students online, I'm just thinking about if you do maybe exam online, how do we assess them, right? So if you're thinking about doing that, we need some proctoring devices, make sure that there's a secondary camera to see that they're performing, because we find that at least from the university experiences, students, they tend not to trust students so much. They believe in the teachers to mark fairly. So you need to create a system so that, right, it is fair, so that every candidate, when they're doing this online tests live at the same time, somewhat is being monitored and nobody want to do something funny. Now, my other way of interpreting your question is assessing whether they're learning online, but if you're speaking, is you do a bit more poll, a bit of feedback, or sometimes you just at the 10-minute mark and say, okay, students, can you put a 1 in the chat here? So you can tell how many people are responding to you, because you can log in. We don't enforce putting the webcam because of people have different home and environment, and that's okay. But people should listen attentively. So if they're not putting the 1, maybe they're really switched off or not there. So that's the first answer here. I would like to probe a bit more about this poll that Mel just did, because it's very interesting result. Most of the respondents here talk about engaging students in collaborative work, but that's not something I face a lot. I put, in fact, the first option is about the well-being, and that's because we find that the biggest struggle in online learning is about self-regulation, about learner self-regulation. Because when in the classroom, the bell rang, we know when to stop. Okay, they know they need to move out of the class, they need to eat, they need to transit. So there's some kind of break here, and they see their friends doing that, they're not alone. But at home, there's no timer. Even just now, I exceeded a bit of time, there's no timer. So nobody knows what's the kind of check regulation. And for young people, it's even harder. So I switched to the next question, which is Mel, what is it again? It is, let me see. Oh, the COI is applicable to all education levels.
All levels, right.
Right, let's segue to from the first question, because we talk about self-regulation, right? It's about online learning. We find that for the younger people, the really young ones, it's a bit harder. And that's because of attention span. I teach at a university, so it's less of a problem because they know that they pay their tuition fees, they need to pass the exams, right, to go to get a job next time. But we find that for young people, maybe just say single digit age, when I have friends who are the parents, right, they need to make sure they are seated at attentive, and that's very hard. So we need to work about the psychology of the students. And one way is, if on the screen, it can be Zoom, Microsoft Teams, or anything. If the learners see their friends all peppered in the same screen, right? It's not the boxes. It's really like some kind of maybe pseudo reality. Then they really know that, okay, there are people with me and they are attentive to participate. Yeah, so that's just some few cents.
Okay, so thank you very much for those insights and practical suggestions, Dr. Fung. We have another set of questions here, and I would like to address these to Sir Obert. Sir Obert, are you ready for the questions from the audience?
Yes,
Okay,
I
so
am
here,
ready.
how does Microsoft determine if a school is valid? And can a community level school, maybe the ones that are not so resourced, no, be considered for teams for education with full features for free? And finally, maybe you can say something about the interface with Google Classroom, because another participant was asking about that. Okay, Obert?
Okay, thank you. Great questions, especially when it comes to schools validity. At the moment, we are focusing more on schools that are registered under the Ministry of Education or under the Ministry of Religious Affairs. Because in Indonesia, we have schools under MOE and schools under Ministry of Religious Affairs, the Islamic schools. So they are under two different ministries. That alone is about 300,000 schools across the country, and not everyone is onboarded yet. So currently we focus on schools and universities, not so much on probably I would say community-based learning, because it's a bit difficult to validate. We've had quite a number of situations where the accounts that we gave away for free were used for frauds, and that's very easy. So that's why we are implementing a very strict procedure in accepting the request. Otherwise, we don't want the tools that we built with the purpose to help others abuse something contradictory to it. So at the moment, we only accept valid school with valid school domains and registered under the ministries. That's one. The second question, does it work well with Google Classroom interface? Now this is simplified. So basically, Teams uses what we call an enterprise approach, whereas the schools or the university is the one creating the accounts for the learners and the instructors. Whereas Google Classroom allows students to create their accounts individually, instructors create their accounts individually, and meet halfway there. So if you Teams for your institution first, and you may need to use a different identity than the one you're using for Google Classroom. So for example, if you're using your account in Google Classroom, say Albert at Indonesia school.sch.id, that's for the Google Classroom. You may need to use a different user ID and domain for accessing Teams, but you can connect them, which, like I showed you earlier, we can connect the some of the features in the LMS. So you can copy and paste the link in your Google Classroom pages, it will open up to a different Teams page, but you need to manage a different identity for that. It gets a bit technical. There's some references in Microsoft Educator Community, Microsoft Educator Center page, which is at educator.microsoft.com. Just feel free to browse. There's so many informations that can help you with your journey in Teams.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that, Albert. And now I'd like to bring Adrian to the spotlight. Adrian, you'd be happy to note that a number of our participants have indicated that they use Google Forms for online quizzes, that they use Google Drawings, and that the students like this a lot, and that the Google Drive is very useful. I have a couple of questions to direct to you, Adrian. This is the first one. There's this participant who says that the traditional PowerPoint is still used as a teaching material, via Zoom.
Mhm.
And he's asking whether you have any suggestions on using any 3D material for teaching AR, using AR for teaching. So that's the first question. And the second one is, maybe you can answer very easily. Should we be afraid or concerned about any personal data that is being collected by providers, whether Google or Microsoft? Yes, Adrian?
Oh, okay. For the first question regarding maybe still engaging your students and maybe to bring something new for the students, for example, AR and VR, as mentioned by Dr. Oracion. You can also explore Google Earth. So this is an application where you can download via your mobile phone, or you can also access through your browser. What's good about Google Earth is that it gives you a 3D experience of the different places and museums all over the world. And it also has like materials to support all of the other subjects, whether you're teaching music, science, history, English, and it adds flavor to the learnings of your students, because they can explore. Once you give, for example, a specific place or a specific location or a museum, the students can do their own tour, like a virtual tour. They can also see artifacts like in high definition, and the other one also, aside from Google Earth, you can take note of it. Google Earth. The other one is Google Arts and Culture. So it has the elements of augmented reality, where they can utilize their mobile phones, and like images or objects can appear in your room, for example, with your mobile phones while turning on your cameras. So that's the two applications that you can use, both for augmented reality AR or virtual reality VR. So that's Google Earth and Google Arts and Culture. For the second question, Dr. Oracion, can you refresh the second?
Sorry. The concern about personal data, the one?
I see.
Okay.
Regarding personal data, if you have your Google for Education accounts, definitely, if your schools are registered, I believe if you have your DepEd accounts, or maybe your under your school, it's safe to ask your students like some information, because it's within your school or within your organization. So that's why we don't really encourage everybody to use their personal accounts for teaching. Like, for example, teachers asking students to create their personal accounts. It can be it's being resourceful, but the dangers of like having an outside account or not within your school grounds might be difficult, or could I don't want to, lack of a better term, might jeopardize like the security of our students. But with our school accounts registered or under the hub of our schools, definitely it would be safe to gather like certain datas for their activities, for lessons, and even for students. If you have like other questions or other concerns, you can also check on my YouTube channel. It's Look Beyond the Classroom. That might also answer some of their questions. I have their tutorials and other featured videos to help them out in more interactive learning and engaging their students. So that's Look Beyond the Classroom.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Sir Adrian. Now I have a question that I'd like to direct to all our panelists. No, there are actually two questions here. One expresses concern about students who live in remote areas. No, and another one is also a concern about students who are in similar situations, not necessarily in remote areas, but children who have very little access to technology, equipment, and all these that are crucial in online education. So I'd like to ask our three gentlemen, what can you suggest to those who are in rather under-resourced environments as far as your specific topics are concerned? May we start with you this time, Sir Adrian? What can you suggest to those who come from very under-resourced environments as far as the topics that you covered?
Well, again, it might overwhelm most of the teachers when it comes to most of the applications being introduced to them. But as much as possible, these are the tools you guys heard earlier can be like a bank, can serve as like, for example, our bank or like weapons for our teachers, so that by the time that we want to like bring these tools to the table or with the students, we can be ready and we can like prepare for it. But actually right now, since we have so many factors that might interfere online teaching, there are so many factors. For example, internet connection, what else, stability, or maybe like specs of our devices. It's just what we really have to make sure is that where we are currently, we have to make sure that we have some backup plans. It doesn't really have to require us to have like the highest specification of the tools, the most upgraded features, not really, but being prepared just in case that there will be technical concerns. We have to make sure that we have some backup plans, and not to be expert really in these tools, but to at least have the basic knowledge of navigating and just making sure that at least we can continue delivering for our students.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Adrian. How about Obert?
Interesting question, and this is something we faced on daily basis here. If you remember my slides earlier, those are probably some of the better ones. I've heard stories from those who are teaching nearing the border of the country. The condition is way beyond description. I just can't describe it to you. You have to see it. I saw the pictures, and they have to take plane, small wing plane to get there, and there's only one flight a day, and only under a certain timing every day. Afterwards, they can't fly. Those are areas where you can't learn remote learning, and they've been doing learning remotely anyway all this while. Now, again, the key is how the schools and the teachers challenge their mindset. Some may use the infrastructure that the school already has. Now, in our case in Indonesia, the government has been giving computer labs to all schools across the country during the last 5 years, 6 years. So the equipments are there in the school and hardly anybody is using it. So it is possible students can come, say, given a specific schedule, like probably once a week or twice a week at a given time, so that they can access and learn some of the contents there, and they can upload their learning progress. So just take turns with whatever they have and be extra creative in utilizing technology. Don't force yourself to be equipped with technology all the time. If it's not possible, then use whatever technology that existed there and use it wisely. Many times, this is what I've seen, many times people expected technology to solve everything. Well, that's not the case. It's the human side that matters the most. So I'm not too afraid with the limitation of access to technology. It all comes back to creativity. Teachers may act differently. Even if the parents only have a mobile phone, they can use that, send messages through WhatsApp, or they send voice notes, or they can record short videos and share it. That's it. Even students learn to succinctly express their ideas. That's the challenge that we all face here. People tend to try to elaborate as much as possible on everything, while the actual content might only be one line, but they try to speak it out like for two full pages. So it's a matter of changing the mindset. I think that's what really matters. And with these times, though learning may be different compared to the original design of the curriculum, there may be some learning losses. There's been debates about it, but I sense because of the survival mode, there are some new learnings and new skills being obtained by everyone as well. So there's always two sides of the coin. That's how I see it.
Okay, thank you very much, Sir Albert. Yes, learning loss has been reported, no? But I think that your insights, no, are also very wise, and we can do a lot to turn things around. Okay, and how about Dr. Fung?
Oh,
What's
I think all the
your
points.
suggestion?
I just have a couple of points to make. With lower technology, there are some ways to work around it. So I like to use an analogy. So some years ago, when technology is not advanced, and let's say it's World Cup, okay, football, people don't watch it from your home. Where do they gather? They gather in a maybe community center, a big screen, right? So this is like one little step backwards here. Possibly for those community who can't have a personalized device or even Wi-Fi, they can gather at a place that's a bit more public at the city, and then they can view the videos, the lectures. So someone asked also in the Q&A about whether should we do more synchronous or asynchronous, and my answer to that is both. It's a combination, because the synchronous teaching is a real in-person face time, and this is sacrosanct, it's very precious. So if there's one little suggestion I give is teachers should pre-record the videos for the knowledge transfer, but when they meet students online, it's really actively engaging them. It's not like, okay, today we're going to learn some mathematics. No, it is really a discussion. We want to engage them actively and between the classes, between the students. So back to the question about technology here. So suppose the students can't access synchronous technology teaching because of technology problem. One way is when they're gathering at the place, there are teachers who, or even support teachers who manage this learning. Because if the learners are at their home and they view videos, or even they can't view videos, there's no feedback. Learning is a community. You can't just receive information. You need to have feedback, to ask questions, to know whether they're on the right track. And that needs people. So if the learners are at home, they don't see the teachers, they can't engage with the friends, I don't think much learning can take place. So what is the next step possibly is when you have these learners gathering in this together, and they might be the same age, let's just say 15 years old, they may not have acquired the competency. You need somebody who's seen to guide the learning activity. So that's some of my thoughts.
Thank you. Dr. Fung, Mr. Josianto, and Mr. Cruz, thank you very, very much once again for those valuable insights. We are learning a lot. We have learned a lot from this session. I am happy to note that to the very end, I think, our participants have stayed on. This is an indication that our participants have been engaged in this afternoon's online or remote learning session. Once again, thank you very, very much. And we shall now be back with Mr. Vignesh Naidu for the closing remarks. Sir Vignesh, you have the screen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oracion, and thank you very much to our three panelists for their insight, their sharing, and their knowledge during today's webinar session. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, as Dr. Carmela said, for staying true throughout the whole webinar series. I must apologize. I see that there are over 99. My Zoom account just shows me 99 plus questions in the Q&A box. And I don't think we were able to address all your questions during this session. And in the interest of time, we cannot drag it for much longer. But ladies and gentlemen, to try to address this challenge, and it's something we've noticed in past webinars where there's so many insightful questions coming through, but so little time, we've created a Facebook group, Teaching, Learning, Leading. And my colleagues will shortly share a link to that Facebook group on our chat function. You'll see it pop up on your screen right now. I urge you to join this group, post your questions, have each other answer. Our panelists, our moderator, and my colleagues and I are also part of the group. And wherever possible, we will also try to address some of these questions. Through the group, what we're trying to do is to build a community of educators from across Southeast Asia who share best practices, who share some tips and suggestions of what they have tried in their schools. Because at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, the transformation that can happen in our school systems can happen when it is driven by those on the ground. So us as educators have to share the best practices that we have encountered and share that knowledge so that everyone can learn. Well, today is the start of our fourth session, our fourth series in our Enhancing Remote Learning, Making Headway webinar series. And to next week on the 18th of November, same time, we'll be having our second session, Supplementing Online Teaching. So I urge you to join us, register for that session. And as I shared at the beginning, certificates of attendance will be issued only to those who have attended and sat through all three sessions. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for staying true, and thank you very much for being a part of this session. I hope you found the information shared by our panelists helpful and useful, and I encourage you, visit our website, check out the other resources available. We have handbooks from our past series. They're all downloadable and open access. So please visit them. Check out our YouTube channel to see more of the recordings and videos that we have posted from previous series and some of our other work. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the HEAD Foundation, have a good evening. Goodbye.